The White House is insisting it is aiming to completely block Iran from ever acquiring nuclear weapons. World powers and Iran agreed last week on a framework for final negotiations to take place in June. They say it will effectively curb Tehran's nuclear program so that it can only be used for peaceful purposes, such as electricity generation. In return, Iran will see crippling sanctions lifted.
That there are still details about the phase out, if you will, of the sanctions that have not yet been agreed to. And it is the strong view of the administration that it would not be wise and it would not be in the interest of the international community to simply take away all of the sanctions on day one.
Well, the Obama administration has ramped up its campaign to try to get backing for the deal with Iran, but it has drawn criticism from congressional Republicans and also the Israeli government and skeptical Arab allies of the United States. Well, the national security analyst Arash Aramesh joins me now live from Los Angeles. Great to speak to you, Arash. Let's talk about Israel first. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister there, says that any deal with Iran would be a bad one. Is that feeling shared by the majority on Capitol Hill, do you think?
Well, it's probably shared by the Republican majority, at least a majority within the Republican majority on Capitol Hill, while we have to say that for those of us, myself included, who have at times been critical of the Obama administration and this deal, I got to say, we have to be realistic. Getting a deal with Iran that would completely take Iran back to a nuclear stone age was just going to be impossible. I, for one, think this is, while it's an imperfect deal with a lot of imperfections, it is a pretty good deal that if enforced and if Iran sticks to its end of the deal and carries out its end of the bargain, it guarantees the world a pretty safe, non-nuclear weaponized Iran. So I think Netanyahu's expectation from the very get-go were sort of unrealistic. But when you bargain, when you come to the bargaining table, you want to set your goals really, really, really high. So when a compromise is reached, you sort of meet your adversary halfway. On Capitol Hill, though, it's a different story. While a lot of congressional Democrats and a lot more Republicans are not very happy, their frustration is mainly over their lack of trust for the Iranian regime and for its activities in the past 36 years, and also some lack of trust in President Obama's ability and his administration to actually enforce this deal that was hashed out in Lausanne, Switzerland last week.
Yeah, it's a difficult balancing act, isn't it? We were hearing earlier that President Obama has spoken to his counterpart in Oman as well, and other Gulf states, saying that whilst getting this deal with Iran is possible and he wants to pursue these diplomatic options, he has also said that he will address Iran's destabilizing activities in the region. So it's not just Israel that's concerned about Iran's activity, is it? It's the wider region as well.
Absolutely. Many Arab states in the Persian Gulf region are more afraid of Iran's expanding sphere of influence than they are about Iran's potential nuclear weapons program. So it is not necessarily that the Iranian nuclear program that scares the Saudis or the Emiratis or the Bahrainis for that matter. It is Iran's expanding influence in Yemen, in Bahrain, in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, in sort of all over the Arabian Peninsula and much of the Persian Gulf, most of which is oil-rich and most of which is surrounded by a Shiite minority. Even though the Shiites are a minority in the Mideast and also in the Islamic world, they constitute a majority of the oil-rich resident sections of the Persian Gulf area. So it's very important to see the fear of the Saudi fears, the fears of other Arab states in the Persian Gulf, but also this is a very complicated situation. The United States can no longer say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. There are factions fighting in Yemen that hate each other, hate the Saudis, hate the Iranians, and hate us. The Houthis, for instance, are very anti-American, very anti-Israeli, supported by the Iranians. And guess what? They're also extremely anti-ISIS and anti-Al-Qaeda. So you see, it's a complicated delicate and very fragile situation. I think Saudi Arabia's involvement in this endeavor is a lose-lose situation. If they didn't get involved in Yemen, Yemen would have completely fallen out of their control. It would have been a Houthi slash former President Ali Abdullah Saleh coalition that would have taken over the country. And now that they are involved, and if they do in fact get inside a ground war in Yemen, it's not going to look pretty for Saudis who haven't seen combat or not combat ready, and also they're going into the poorest country in the Arab world, and I'm not sure exactly why. So Iran has pretty much opened a new front in this proxy war to drag Saudi Arabia in, while Iran has been dragged into Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon.